know Marcella is enjoying her day from sunny California. So thanks for joining us today. I am so excited to share about this wonderful webinar, completely free. And do not worry, we are recording, so this will be shared with you all after the event. How to save 15 hours per week with smarter grant tracking. I actually started in the grant making and writing and doing space. So I totally get how overwhelming grant writing can be, especially when you are tracking all of your deadlines via post-its or God knows how many Excel sheets. And I'm so excited that Instrumentl is going to come and share a little bit about what they are doing to help you with that. So before we jump into that, I just want to share a little bit about Community Boost. Community Boost exists to empower nonprofits and causes through high impact digital marketing so that they can change the world. So we are here for you guys, and we want to make sure you are empowered to do what you do best. So let us know if there are any webinars you want to see coming up. I'm so excited to help you and engage with you guys and make sure that we're hitting all the things that you want to be able to do with your work. And on that note, I do want to give you an opportunity to join our Fundraising AI Global Summit 2024 Generate Good. Community Boost is so excited to partner with Fundraising AI. And I know that AI can be super overwhelming and a little bit scary for people. So what does it look like to use it to generate good? I hope you're able to actually come through and register, and I want to see you guys there. So feel free to stay tuned for that registration link, and you can also do it right here and right now. And I also want to plug in very quickly that Instrumentl also was able to speak at our nonprofit marketing summit this last month, actually. I know time is flying. But if you are interested in getting some of their amazing resources, their links, and also access that recording, you can do so right now. All right. Well, without further ado, I want to make sure I am able to intro you to the amazing, amazing speaker we have lined up today. Instrumentl asked about the toughest problems grant writers are looking to solve, and they listened. So Nia helps nonprofits and grant seekers find and win more grants with Instrumentl. With a background in nonprofit management, she previously led events and partnerships at a rainforest conservation organization. That's so cool, Nia. So let's show her some love in the chat, and I'm going to let her take it away from here. All right, all you, Nia.
Thank you, Princey. Hi, everyone. I'm so excited to be here. Instrumentl loves partnering with Community Boost for these fun webinars, and I love getting to spend my morning with all of you. So for starters, thank you everyone for taking the time out of your day to be here with us. I know we're all busy nonprofit professionals, and so I really appreciate you taking the time. I would love to get to know who's in the room with me today. So if you can introduce yourself, share your name, your role, and your organization in the chat, that'll just get the ball rolling because we're going to be chatting a lot today. We're going to be using that chat box quite a lot. So let's just go ahead and introduce ourselves. And then Princey's actually going to launch a poll for me so I can get a better sense of the types of people we have in the room with us today. So for starters, I would love for you to tell me about your grants expertise. Are you quite a seasoned grants expert? Are you kind of getting the hang of it? Are you totally new to it? This might be your first foray into the world of finding funding. Or maybe you're not sure. You're like, I don't know, I do grants, but I don't know how good I am. Any of those, totally valid. I would just love to see the type of people we have here with us today. And I see that almost all of you have voted. Let's give you all a couple seconds. I would love for everybody to let me know what level of grant seeking expertise they consider themselves to be at. So it looks like A little under half of you feel like you're getting the hang of it. That's a really good place to be at. And I think this webinar is actually going to be perfect if you're at that stage. If you're brand new, there's definitely a lot of tips you can get from today's event as well. And if you're an expert, I would love for you to chime in the chat and let us know some of your own best practices as we move through some of this stuff. Princey, can we go ahead and launch the second poll as well? I would also just love to know if any of you already use Instrumentl. And I'll actually share a little bit more about Instrumentl throughout today's webinar if you've never heard of us before, but I'm guessing some of you in the room do know about it. All right, it looks like 4 of you so far do use Instrumentl. That's exciting to see. Welcome. This event is geared more towards Instrumentl newbies, so if you feel like you want to stick around and get a little refresher, we would love to have you, but if you feel like you need to drop because you're already an expert at all things Instrumentl, we won't be offended. That's totally fine. And it looks like the majority of you are interested in trying Instrumentl, and you are in the perfect place. I'm actually gonna have you roll up your sleeves and play around in Instrumentl with me today. So thank you, Princey, for those polls. With that, go ahead and introduce yourselves in the chat, and I'm actually gonna get us rolling here. So today's webinar is how to save up to 15 hours per week with smarter grant tracking. And again, thank you so much for being here. This free grant workshop is one of our Instrumentl educational webinars, and our goal is to focus on challenges grant writers are trying to solve while identifying the tools and sharing resources to support grant seekers along the way. And if you've been to one of our webinars before, let me know in the chat as well if you're an Instrumentl webinars regular or if this is your first time at one of our events. I'd love to just get a little bit more background on you. And for those of you who are all new to Instrumentl, we are the most loved all-in-one grants platform for prospecting, tracking, and management. And we currently help almost 4,000 nonprofits and grant consultants save time in finding and applying for more grants. And I know Princey already introed me, but here's just another quick recap of who I am. I'm one of the newest team members here at Instrumentl. I'm an events and community manager, and my job is to develop helpful and educational events like this one to share with our Instrumentl community. And I actually come from the nonprofit world, so prior to this, I worked at a rainforest conservation and research nonprofit, like Princey mentioned, and I was building partnerships and events like the annual World Rainforest Day Summit, and I was actually on the grant support team. So a fun fact about me is I used Instrumentl as a customer before I was on this team. And some quick FYIs about today's event. It's going to be about an hour long, and this includes the presentation. And then if we have time, there'll be Q&A at the end. So if you have questions that come up, feel free to use that Q&A section next to the chat, and we'll come back to those at the end. Like I said, this is geared towards Instrumentl newbies, so if you're a seasoned Instrumentl user, we will not be offended if you drop off, but feel free to stick around if you want a refresher. This event is being recorded, so you'll get the recording and slides delivered straight to your inbox. And I want to make sure you feel free to take care of your personal needs during our event. So whether it's grabbing a snack or stepping away for a quick break, you do you. We will be right here. And we never send anyone home empty-handed, so stick around till the end to fill out our event feedback form and get your hands on this Instrumentl freebie. This is a really handy resource. It includes real-life examples from grant seekers who have saved time and improved their workflows, all without those messy Excels. And that's not all you'll be leaving with. So I would love to hear from you. Give me a thumbs up or a yes in the chat if your organization could use a couple more good fit grant opportunities or funders on your radar. I feel like you can just never go wrong with having a couple more opportunities identified. We want to make this hour super valuable for you because you're taking time out of your Thursday to be here and learn with us. So I'll make sure everyone can leave with a curated list of good fit funders. At Instrumentl, oops, sorry, one sec. Yeah, Michael. Of course, definitely. That's that's how I feel as well. You can definitely always have some more funding opportunities. So at Instrumentl, our goal is to empower nonprofits to tap into new opportunities. So if you roll your sleeves up with us and dive into today's workshop, you'll be able to go back to your team or leadership literally right after this webinar with a list of brand new funding opportunities that your organization has been custom matched with. And these are all pulled from our database of almost 20,000 active grant opportunities. I actually checked this morning right before this webinar. So the Instrumentl database has 19,963 active public and private grant opportunities. So we have a stellar content team adding almost 150 new grants weekly. We really are uniquely comprehensive and up to date. And this is going to save you hours of research. I can promise you that, actually, as an ex-Instrumentl user from my nonprofit days. But I really want you to see for yourselves. So I've set up an opportunity for all of you to play with the platform today and get access to that database. And on top of that tailored list of opportunities, you'll get your own organized grant tracker that's specific to your ongoing projects. You can even upload existing spreadsheets so it's populated with your funding history. And Krista asks, if you don't plan to get an account with Instrumentl, will this webinar still be useful? Yes, we have designed this webinar that all of the tips and best practices that we go over are things you can implement outside of Instrumentl as well. So there's going to be a lot of grant seeking best practices that we've built from our network of experts and also our customers. And I'll show you how you can do that on Instrumentl, but also you can implement those outside of Instrumentl as well. And so with that out of the way, let's get into it. The grant tracking journey is a long one. It might be a full-time job for one or several people on your team, or if you're a smaller organization, grants might take up a big chunk of time for someone who has a lot else going on. It's competitive, it's complex, there's a lot of moving pieces. And if you're like me, you probably have a lot of questions about the best strategy or approach. But we can turn this process into a more manageable one if we take it piece by piece. So I want to know, let me know in the chat box, which phase of the grant tracking journey do you feel is your biggest challenge at this point in time? Let me know in the chat box. Feel free to drop a number or tell me more specifically, which one does your organization struggle with the most right now? Is it that research and prospecting, so actually finding those opportunities, the application process, compliance, so monitoring those budgets and the spending? Princey says depends on the day. Yeah, if it's a compliance and budget day, that's the one I'm struggling with. That's very fair. It looks like we're pretty unanimous on research and prospecting being pretty hard, although I am seeing some compliance, finance, reporting, evaluation. So I'm actually intentionally making you pick one, even though I know each of these is an obstacle course in itself. But I want us to think really critically for the duration of this event about which of these in our respective orgs maybe needs the most attention and how we can best set ourselves up for success. And the key takeaway from what I'm seeing in the chat right now is that you're not alone. Regardless of which option you picked, there are other professionals in this room who are struggling with the same exact thing. Reporting, getting participants to follow through and submit their reports, 100%. Grant seeking is not a solo sport. There's so many players involved, and that can make it really complicated. I'm actually going to touch on that a little bit later in the webinar as well, so I'm glad you brought that up. And so the nice thing about today's event is we're actually going to talk a little bit about each of those stages because there are ways to address these challenges. And as we go through the event, if you have tips or tricks for how you found success at your organization with any aspect of what I'm covering, feel free to drop it in the chat. I find it's always really helpful to hear for everybody else in the room how other nonprofit leaders are approaching these common hurdles. And then also for me, as I do these webinars and speak to other nonprofits, I love to take away your insights and comments. So with that, let's get into it. We're going to continue exploring some elements of the grant tracking journey just to get us on the same page about what this journey even entails. We'll explore how we use existing systems to track opportunities and talk about how we can improve those systems. So if you've ever been caught off guard by a grant deadline or realized a certain important document was missing from your application, this is what we're going to try to figure out how to improve. And then we'll also look at ways we're keeping stakeholders up to date. So this can be a funder, or it can be internal stakeholders like your board or anyone that's involved in the grants process. Because like I said, it's not a solo sport. Grant writing naturally involves others. And if you can't keep stakeholders up to date, then it's really hard to get the buy-in from them and the resources to scale and keep that work going. And then going a little bit deeper into that point, we'll actually talk about how to document important relationship building that happens with both existing and potential funders. And this is a really, really critical aspect of all grant seeking, but particularly retaining donors. One fun tidbit, I guess, fun is maybe not the right word, but one interesting insight I want to bring here is that at Instrumentl, we publish regular insights reports based on everything we see on the back end with our database. And so often we're catching trends as they emerge. One that's really stood out to me this year is that only 24% of private funders are giving to new grantees. So that's a huge chunk of private funders who are only really prioritizing repeat grantees. So it's so important that we're doing that relationship building in a way that's going to allow us to nurture relationships if we want, to retain those existing funders and maybe even turn them into major donors. And then, like I said, we'll wrap up with giving you the space to ask questions. So hopefully we have some time left over for that. And throughout all of this, you'll actually have the opportunity to roll up your sleeves and apply some of these concepts, or at least get that initial list of good fit funders to take back to your team or leadership today. And like I mentioned earlier, if you're not planning on diving into Instrumentl, you can still take some notes about best practices that you can start implementing outside of the platform as well. So back to our grant tracking journey. Grant tracking is overseeing a grant's entire journey, naturally. And there are a lot of aspects to it, from that initial research and prospecting phase, which a lot of you said is really the biggest hurdle for you, the funding milestones, and then that final reporting in the post-award stage. So in the very beginning, we want to make sure we're setting ourselves up for the different steps that we need to be prepared to track for. So we want to be conducting searches that'll help us find the best fit funders and grants for our specific cause. We want to be cultivating those important relationships, and this can happen through leadership or the board. It might be good old cold calls. We'll actually get some tips and tricks for cultivating relationships later on. And then in the pre-award stage, we'll also work on submitting applications to the grants that we do decide are good matches for the work we do, following up on pending submissions. And this is that period of waiting with bated breath to hear if we sealed the deal. And then we have the post-award phase. So once we've scored the funds, woo, go us, we still have to track across the post-award lifecycle. So the work does not end there. And this is something that we should really be thinking about way early in the process. Like before we even win the grant or before we apply for it, we want to make sure we're equipped to handle the post-award process. So if you're in the early stages of grant seeking, you should be thinking about how you'll comply with the grant terms before you apply for the grant. You want to be sure you can actually comply with those terms, because they vary so much from funder to funder, and you want to be equipped with that information. And I know for our experts, this is probably something you review with your clients, if you're working with a nonprofit, or with your leadership if you are the grant seeker. But some things we consider in this phase is the monitoring on our spend down from the funds we were given. So tracking where that money's actually going, tracking deadlines, writing and submitting reports, and then evaluating the impact these funds actually had on our projects, which is really what the funders want to see. Like, how did we implement their mission effectively with the funds that we were provided? So it's a lot of moving pieces and a lot to keep track of. And so in order to set our team and ourselves up for success, we need to be super organized with this process. And I've pulled together 3 indicators of organized grant tracking. And as I go through these, just reflect on your organization's experiences. Think about if your team is maybe already doing these. Is it something you've already identified as something that you want to level up in? And maybe you can get some best practices here. First is that everyone's following a clear organizational system. This one seems like a no-brainer, but getting to a place where you have a system that everyone has bought into and contributes to is pretty tricky. You would be surprised how many organizations don't have standardized workflows for grants specifically, even if they do have well-established systems for other parts of their work. And if you're in a new organization or you're just starting your grants journey, getting a clear system in place from the get-go will actually pay dividends. And then another sign of organized grant tracking is going to be must-do tasks and important dates being added to calendars ahead of deadlines in a way that's transparent to other stakeholders and team members, holds people accountable for tasks, and then assigns ownership for specific tasks. So organizations that are really set up well for grant seeking have all of this laid out in an accessible place for all of the team members who are involved. And this entails so many people. It can be accounting, programmatic staff, evaluation staff, leadership, board. Anyone can see what's happening with a grant at any given time. And on top of that, everyone knows their role well ahead of time. That way, there's no confusion about who's responsible for what, where a certain opportunity is at, and what next steps need to be taken to secure that grant and keep funding coming. And it also makes it very easy to report out. If you've ever had leadership or the board check in on grants, and you've had to scramble to pull together all the details and who's doing what and solicit, the moving pieces from all these different folks. A system like this one gets you way ahead of the curve. And lastly, and arguably one of the more important ones, is that relationship building with funders is clearly documented. Terry's asking, can you describe a clear organizational system? Yeah, so we're actually going to dive into each of these things pretty heavily over the coming minutes. So hang in there just a second and I'm going to get to it. So back to relationship building with funders. This needs to be clearly documented. So many of you might have a CRM system in place to keep track of communications between funders and your organization. But if you don't have the budget for a CRM, where are you outlining and updating the information about the who, the what, the why of touch points with key people? If you connected with a funder at an event and no one from your team knows that you made this valuable connection, how's that going to help you advance your organization's mission? Documenting these relationships is so important to building the foundations that's going to help your organization stand out and be able to act on and respond to opportunities that may arise because of your connection to funders. I think all of us can agree that having an in with a funder is just so invaluable. And a lot of the time, nonprofits don't realize the connections that they do have because we're not documenting them well. So I want to hear from you before we jump into the actual best practices that I just promised Terry. I want to hear from you in the chat. What current grant tracking flows do you have? Like, what's it like at your organization? How are you currently tracking funding opportunities across projects? What are the tools or tactics you're using right now to track? And I would also love to hear from you. Are you happy with your grant tracking system? So Christina says none. And I'm guessing, Christina, the answer to if you're happy with that system is going to be a no, but let us know if it's a yes. I know for me in my nonprofit days, when I joined, I wasn't on the grants team, but one of the things I was tasked with was actually setting up a system for the grants team. So creating this grant tracking system. And when we started, we were just using spreadsheets. None at the moment. Yeah, so it seems like a lot of us are not using any consolidated system, and that makes sense. You're not alone if you're saying that you want to improve or you're not totally happy with your tracking strategy. We surveyed folks about their current grant tracking systems from the people we speak with at webinars, and 80% of the 100 grant writers we talked to said they'd like to improve their strategy. So that's a huge chunk, 80%. So you're definitely not alone. And I actually have a quote from one of our wonderful current Instrumentl users. She shared how she relied on spreadsheets to track critical aspects of her grant process, but spreadsheets became too tedious to work with when tracking 5 whole years of submissions. And isn't that the truth? I am a spreadsheets lover through and through, but let me tell you, there are some things that it's just not the best at. So who else in the room is familiar with those 5-year spreadsheets? It took a lot for me to say goodbye to my spreadsheets. Yeah, I see there's some people here, Excel. Yeah, I'm an Excel lover, so no shame to spreadsheets. They can be super useful, but they definitely have a limit. Here's some of the other answers I see often, and they do align with what some of you are writing in the chat. Physical files is a big one. I know in some of our webinars that we run, people talk about how they still use sticky notes just on their desk to keep track of things. And I'm like, you know what? If it works, it works. But often you're gonna run into some serious hurdles. So, like I said, maybe they're working for you right now, but at the end of the day, there's a problem here. And it's that funding opportunity updates, project statuses, and background context live in one person's inbox, one person's spreadsheet, or one person's brain. And we talked earlier about clear organizational systems that everyone on the team is familiar with and has bought into. And when all of this info lives in one brain or is scattered across maybe several brains, there's not really a way to have a holistic view of what's happening. And so the first thing we want to tackle here is getting to the state where we have clear documentation procedures, like standardized status updates and context notes to help create seamless collaboration. And I'm going to give you some examples of what this might look like. So many of you may already do this, but make sure you're consistent with organizing your grants by grant seeking phase. So if you're using an Excel or any other sort of database, this is something you can really easily implement if you don't already. This can be broken out into categories like pre-award. So if you haven't even won or applied for the grant, it would be in the pre-award phase. In progress, this is where you're working on that grant application. You're writing the LOI, you're collecting the materials, and then the post-award phase. So after you've been awarded the grant and you have to do the work and write the reports, that's that post-award phase. And on Instrumentl, each grant you're tracking can be assigned one of these statuses that you see on the right. It's all built into the platform, so it means everyone from your team who's using Instrumentl already has that standardized system. And it's totally applicable, like I said, off Instrumentl. So if you look at your spreadsheets, do you have a column with standardized options similar to these for tracking just the status? If not, it's something you can implement in 15 seconds. Like before I even finish covering the slide, you could probably add that column in your spreadsheet. And you can customize this to fit your needs. At my nonprofit, there were 2 of us doing that initial opportunity review. So our system included shortlisting grants in the pre-award phase. So in addition to the pre-award, in progress, and post-award, we had a column that said approved by, and whoever, like if one of us reviewed first, we would say whether or not we approved it. That way, when my counterpart would go in to review, she would know my thoughts on a certain opportunity. Like, oh, Nia's already reviewed this and she thinks it's a good fit. So that was just a way to expedite our process. The next thing is you'll want to make sure that you and any staff also interacting with your grants workflow are using standardized context note formats for every update. So if you don't already have a space in your spreadsheet for people to add notes about certain opportunities, I would definitely recommend adding that. Not all grant info can be nicely squeezed into a drop-down option, so we need a place to make those human notes as well. And when you do this, you'll want to decide a couple key things. The first is, when should someone fill out a note on an opportunity? Is it when someone talks to a funder? Is it if they hear about a networking connection? Is it if they find a past grantee that aligns with your mission? There should be a common understanding about when a note needs to be filled out. And then you just have to have a common understanding about what should be included in the note. A good starting point is that they should always include their initials and the date if you're on a multi-person team. So that way, in this note, for example, RFC, that's my colleague Rachel Fiddler-Canella, I can see that she put down a note about, and this is what it looks like in Instrumentl. So in Instrumentl, again, the opportunity notes are built in, but it's something you can implement in a spreadsheet as well. And if there's one thing from this list I think you absolutely need to implement if you don't already have a system for, it's this next point. We want to make sure those invaluable funder connections are clearly documented for the whole team to see. So this information tends to live with one person. At a nonprofit I worked for, our leadership had so many personal connections to funders across the whole stage, but every single time we were researching opportunities or writing applications, we had to chase down our leadership to talk with them and get the download on this really valuable history. So imagine if this information just lived in your grant tracking system. It's almost like having a cheat code in a video game. You're suddenly set up infinitely better with this funder because, they know your CEO, or they volunteer for a cause similar to yours, or your kids might go to school together, whatever it is. So as you build this system, consider what key information you might be holding onto and how you can share those details more readily with other folks working with you on grants. And this will help you continue to hone your unique hook with a funder if you can consolidate what you know about them and how they connect to your mission. And you can use a platform like Loom. This is a little pro tip from our team. Loom is a screen recording platform, and it lets you record just quick video snippets or just old Google Docs to explain how you want your funding opportunities documented. So we use Looms all the time. If there's something we want to explain about a process, I'll film a quick Loom and send it to all of my colleagues, and that way they have a 1-minute video they can reference forever. And that's a fun idea. You can film a Loom and attach it into your spreadsheet or whatever you're using, so that way there's always a quick demo for the best way for everybody to use that information. And here's what this looks like in Instrumentl. We make things really easy. So every status update and opportunity note is in one place, visible to all team members who use Instrumentl, and all of you can easily monitor your opportunities in the grant tracker. Based on feedback from our users, we confidently estimate that the system we've built with Instrumentl saves about an hour a day. And here's Allison, who's another Instrumentl user. She shares that she loves having all her grant information in one location because it makes it easier for her whole team to spend less time on management and more time on their mission. So again, whether it's Instrumentl or whatever centralized system you have, it's really going to help your whole team. Moving on to our next point is keeping stakeholders up to date with deadlines. And I'm curious to hear from folks in the room, how do you keep stakeholders up to date? Let me know in the chat box. For me, in my nonprofit days, it was a boatload of phone calls. Emails just didn't cut it with our stakeholders. So I was always on the phone having to call folks and chase them down and let them know, this is due or this is coming up. But I'd love to hear how you all are doing it. Calls and emails. Yep. A lot of calls and emails. Newsletters, snail mail, that's a good one. Calendar reminders, super important. Creating deadline extensions. Yeah. So there's a lot that we're doing on our end to optimize how engaged our stakeholders can be, right? Here's some other common reminders we see about how people are keeping stakeholders up to date, chasing them down in the hall. That's one that my colleague Rachel added. She used to work at a museum, and I think a lot of her time was spent running around the museum halls chasing down stakeholders. So the problem we're facing here is that tasks and deadlines are not centralized. So maybe they're spread across a bunch of platforms. You might have people who've said they'll check Asana, but they don't. Or, and this is a big one for me, there's a spreadsheet that lives in someone's drive that hasn't been shared with key people. So I'll be told, oh, it's in this sheet, and I'll try to access it, and it hasn't been shared with me. And lo and behold, this person's out on vacation for 2 weeks. So now all of that information is inaccessible to our entire team. This leads to confusion and stress. Key milestones approach, and we just can't get into that spreadsheet. Yeah, Princey knows. Princey knows what I'm talking about. It's the restricted Google Drive, yeah. So the ideal state we want to get to is that everyone involved with grants, but really everyone on our team, is taking ownership of the grants lifecycle. And to do that, we have to create our home base, so the place where tasks are articulated, prioritized, time-stamped, and assigned. So what I recommend here is drafting really specific tasks for each milestone. Think about each phase of this grant and think how you might be assigning those tasks. So if one of your tasks is finalize budgets, that probably means the accounting team will need to know and be looped in ahead of time. You might want to remind yourself or your executive director about a site visit or a thank you note. I would say it's always best to get really nitty gritty. If your to-do list has 55 items, that's a lot better than it having 2 and suddenly realizing that you've missed 53 really important steps, right? So start really, really large. Just get everything down there, and then you can figure out who needs to be looped in, what can be removed from the to-do list. Maybe you don't have to do it. Maybe you can assign it to someone. And finally, make sure you're giving yourself and your team enough leeway for everything. So especially things like impact reports that require survey analysis, compiling the info. These deadlines really should leave room for error. And do an audit of those key stakeholders. So I kind of touched on this already, but you want to know, is it going to involve accounting? Is it going to involve program officers? When should the report be reviewed and by whom? And if you need feedback, you want to make sure that's also part of the timeline. So leaving room for error. Something I do for myself regularly and then also for my team members is set a false deadline, just so I know I have that buffer room. If a grant is due on September 30th, in my notes, I'll say it's due on September 20th. And that way I still have those 10 days to make any changes, or if somebody doesn't deliver on time. Just a little safety zone for me. And on Instrumentl, you can actually assign your team members to specific tasks. You can do this across different spreadsheets as well. I know on Excel, you can tag someone and have them identified that way as the owner, but really having that clear division of labor. And I know our program teams are working hard. They're the boots on the ground that are implementing the programs we're working so hard to fund. So we want to give them the leeway and the heads up about what you need from them. So whether that's testimonials or survey results, I would say a pro tip here is to set yourself a deadline so you're not scrambling. And you can do this by putting a quarterly reminder just in your calendar to say, check in with programs teams, set them up for success by telling them right now exactly what you'll need from them in 3 months or 4 months. Often we're not the ones that aren't delivering on a certain thing, but we can always do just a little bit more to set others up for success, because in turn, it's going to set our grant seeking up for success, right? And so with Instrumentl, you'll never lose track of another deadline because we have assigned tasks and automatic deadline reminders. So the weight is totally off your shoulders here. And here's another Instrumentl user, Cynthia, who loves the peace of mind she's found with an organized tracking system. This was a big one for me. No more jumping out of bed at 2 a.m. realizing something was unaccounted for. And this Instrumentl or spreadsheets, whatever it is, once you have an organized system, you're sleeping soundly. Trust me. And let's pivot to talking about relationships with funders. I'm going to ask you to share your experience in the chat box again. Let me know where that valuable information about funders lives at your organization. So surely you have some funders that you have existing relationships with. Where are you documenting that? I would love to know. If you've met a donor in person, or if your CEO happens to go to the same gym as them, or if your kids are in school together, where are you documenting tidbits like this? These are the ones that I commonly hear in our CRM, so like Salesforce. They live in email threads. Email threads aren't ideal because you have to dig to find that information, and it's probably not accessible to everyone. But the really painful, I'm speaking from experience, the really painful one is when it just lives in someone's head. And I'll talk about this in a second. But the problem we're facing here is that relationships are key to securing sustainable funding, but without a repository or home for this info, it can feel very fragmented. So if someone can't get into your inbox, they can't look back on past communication and context that can be invaluable to keep relationships going and growing. And obviously, they can't look into your head either, right? In my noggin. Yeah. So that's how it is a lot. And it makes it a bit tough when there's multi-person teams, right? So potential networking connections can be through your board or your leadership, and these are people who aren't necessarily involved in the day-to-day of grants work. So we want to have a system to collect and store that info from them. Something I did at my nonprofit, and this was a task, I mean, it took hours, was I sat down with our CEO and leadership, and I went through name by name each major or recurring donor, and I took notes in our database about them. And this was tidbits our team would never have known, but such a leg up when seeking fundings. So like the examples of the types of things I documented was, this is my next door neighbor, to they volunteered with us 10 years ago, or they're particularly passionate about causes in Texas, because that's where we were based. This is like invaluable information, and it really can just be a couple words, but it gives you, again, such a leg up when you're reaching out to that funder. So one solution here is to actually document all of the background research you do. We're naturally spending a lot of time looking into funders to see if they're a good fit for us. And you're probably already asking a lot of questions like, is your cause one that the funder usually supports? What's the average size of the grants that they give? Who and where do they typically fund? And looking at their giving history, so like the last 3 or so years of their giving, see if anything stands out. Are they giving to new grantees? Are they mostly giving to repeat grantees? And as you're doing all of this, I would really encourage you to actually build a document or a spreadsheet to track all of this info. So that way, if an opportunity from the same funder comes up in 8 months, you don't have to go through the process of rebuilding your foundational understanding of them. If you're an expert grant seeker, I'm sure these are all questions you're already looking for when evaluating opportunities. If you're new to grants, feel free to screenshot this. This is like a nice little cheat sheet of things you should be looking for. But in these screenshots, you can see this is what the info looks like on Instrumentl. It's all laid out for you, and this is pulled directly from Foundation's 990 form. So you don't have to search or document any of it yourself, but 990 forms are public information. So even if you're not on Instrumentl, you can get all of this information just by searching online for the 990 forms. And you can spend time building your own database if you're not using something like Instrumentl. If you are on Instrumentl, you don't really have to build anything because Instrumentl just provides you with it. And then the next thing I want to talk about is to create scheduled tasks to add funder cultivation to the workflow. So funder cultivation shouldn't be something that happens when you remember to do it or just like as an afterthought. You want to make it a very intentional part of your grants journey, the way we see submitting applications as a non-negotiable part of the process. And to really nurture these relationships, we have to build it into the system if it isn't already there. So things like adding them to your mailing list so they're getting regular updates, and scheduling funder-specific communications to keep them in the loop. This can be sending them an annual report or another important document. And then also remembering to, if they're local to you, invite them for a site visit. If you have an event coming up, send them a personalized invitation to that. Ask them to come volunteer for a day. Help them actually see how their dollars make a tangible impact on the community you're serving. And my last pro tip here is, as you review key foundations, cross-reference LinkedIn to check for mutual connections. You might be surprised to find your board members or staff have second or third degree connections with some of these people, and you can use those to your advantage. If you're not sure how to find foundation contacts, again, those Form 990s that are available online will have all of that information. Or if you're using Instrumentl, it's actually just listed for you right there on your platform. And if you're using Instrumentl, you can track your funder relationships right here in the platform. You can keep funder notes in one place. You can review research on funders. There's a whole insights tab that we've built out. And we think, again, based on surveys, that this will save about an hour a day on prospecting if you're in that phase of research. And here's Piper sharing her experience about how Instrumentl gives her her time back by doing the research for her and then letting her actually focus on crafting and submitting stellar applications. So if, as I went through some of these tips and tricks, you've identified ways you want to improve your own process, you're not alone. As a reminder, 80% of grant seekers we spoke to emphasize that same feeling. And if I told you you could tangibly improve at least some of what we covered today, would you be willing to do that? Christina says time is money and money is time. Absolutely. There is so much automation that exists right now that we can be taking advantage of for our nonprofits. I think for me, obviously, I work for Instrumentl now, and this is a tech company. But when I worked in nonprofits, there was so many things that I was doing manually that I now realize there's just something that'll do that for me. I have my time back and I can focus on the actual mission, right? So let me know in the chat, leave a yes or give me a thumbs up if you're ready to improve some of these practices today. Because I'm going to help you get the ball rolling by showing you how to do it on Instrumentl. But as a reminder, you will get this recording. So if there's some best practices that you really loved and you want to start implementing it on your spreadsheets, you'll be able to do that today as well. Some of it is as simple as just adding a column, right? So I want to make sure that you leave this event with a tailor-made list of good fit funders from our database of almost 20,000 opportunities. That's a huge amount. When you jump into Instrumentl with me this morning, we'll get you that list. And you'll also get your own organized grant tracker that's specific to your ongoing projects. And you can actually even upload existing spreadsheets so it's populated with your funding history. So for those of you with 5 or 6 year old Excels, none of that info has to go away. It can actually get very seamlessly transferred into the Instrumentl platform, so you have it right there and you don't have to start fresh. And lastly, you will have automatic deadline reminders. So anytime an RFP gets updated and a deadline is changed, you'll get a notification and it takes the pressure off you to have to set up reminders or manually check for deadline updates. It's just magically there for you. So if there's one thing you take from today's event, I want it to be this. There are tried and true strategies to manage your grant tracking. I'm about to show you how Instrumentl does it for you, but in some of the previous slides, we explored how you can do that manually on spreadsheets as well. So for those of you who are new to Instrumentl, use this link. I'll drop it in the chat box right now. Princey, I don't think it's letting me post it. Okay, there we go. You can use this link that Princey just dropped in the chat box. And this is a very important step. It'll take just a couple minutes to set your account up, but you're going to be rewarded with dozens, if not hundreds, of relevant grant opportunities almost immediately. Before this webinar is over, we'll be able to set that up for you. So I highly recommend you take advantage of this time right here. We do love free stuff. Yes, we do. I'll give folks just a moment to open that link on their browsers and feel free to leave this meeting to the side. I'll actually walk you through what you need to do, so you don't have to watch me for this portion. You're going to have a page that asks you to sign up. It's going to ask for some very basic information about your organization to get you started. This will be your name, your contact information, information about your 501c3 status, your annual operating revenue, and how many grants you've won in the past year. So go ahead and fill that out. And I'm going to give everyone a minute here to do that. And when you do that, you're going to get to this page, schedule your trial kickoff call. This is where you'll be able to book a call with one of our grant advisors. And these are people who are so knowledgeable about Instrumentl and can really work with your needs to help you get the most out of this platform. I always recommend folks take advantage of a kickoff call so you're able to start prioritizing the features that are relevant to your needs and also give you immediate results. But because we want you to get your good fit opportunities, you do have the option to skip this kickoff call right now. I want to highlight that this is only for the duration of the event. So if you make an account later, you won't be able to skip this call. You'll still get a free trial, but you will have to meet with one of our grant experts first. So I would really recommend, if you're on the fence about Instrumentl, at least just set up your account right now. So that way you can go back to it, maybe it's 10 days from now, and you can just get right into the platform. And I'm going to wait here for just a minute, give folks time to catch up. And if you are setting up an account, feel free to leave a thumbs up in the chat when you're done. And then once you have that, I'm actually going to show you how to find funders. We're moving right onto the stage where we're finding funders. It'll be about 8 or 9 really simple questions about your project, and you're going to be rewarded pretty much immediately, maybe 4 or 5 seconds later, with dozens and probably over 100 best fit opportunities, again, pulled from our database of almost 20,000 active grants. And those opportunities are actually sourced by our very real, very human grants content team. They are just such stellar, smart people, and they are scouring for the best opportunities all day long. So I'm actually going to move on just in the interest of time here. And if you're still setting up your account, no worries, you can catch up later as well. I will emphasize now is the best time to set up your account so you can get right to the grants without having to do that kickoff call later. So we're going to find funders by creating a project, and this is very easy. Again, I'll talk you through this, so feel free to keep the Instrumentl tab open. And you can think of this as filling out a simple form about your nonprofit organization. And if you end up changing information later, you can always edit it, so no need to make it perfect right now. And I want to note that all of the search parameters that we're going to use on Instrumentl are ones that you can use outside of the platform too. So you'll see what I mean in just a moment. But as we indicate the criteria in Instrumentl about the types of grants we're looking for, that criteria is also something you can use if you're searching just on Google or through any other directory. You can keep that in mind as we move through this. So we'll start by picking your location and your fiscal year. And this just helps narrow in on if there's any particularly local opportunities that are good, but Instrumentl will also provide opportunities that are national in scope. And then you're gonna name your project. So this is gonna narrow down the opportunities to be tailored to a specific project as opposed to your organization as a whole. We can get really specific to ensure best fit matches. So my sample project is gonna be about turtle education, for example. And then once we do that, we're gonna indicate the type of organization we are. So I'm a nonprofit, but I'm also partnering with a school and a zoo. So I wanna make sure I'm seeing grants for that as well. And I'm not a faith-based organization, but you can indicate that if you are. Again, it'll show you opportunities that are national in scope. And here's one of the most important aspects. It's our fields of work. It's essentially focus areas of your project. And you can search for the term and get suggestions, or you can browse all categories and find ones that are suitable for your project. But this is really the backbone of Instrumentl's matching algorithm. So you want to select specific keywords that hit the nail on the head for your program's mission. And this will remove broader matches that may not be as good of a fit. And it'll help source much more aligned opportunities. So you can see I'm selecting a couple different ones here about environmental education. I would say 2 to 5 fields of work is a really good start. And then you can go up or down from there depending on the matches you're seeing. Like I said, you can always edit all of this information later. And then once you've picked your fields of work, we're also going to indicate our desired grant size. So this just makes sure you're not seeing grants for $1,000 if that's not what you're interested in. And it also ensures that you're not seeing grants for $1 million if that's not something your organization can support right now. And then once you've done that, you'll pick the use of funding. So in my case, it'll be like education, projects. This is just to make sure that the grants it shows you are ones that you're actually eligible for. You'll pick the type of funders you'd like to get grants from. So I'm just gonna go ahead and pick all of them because why not? And if you want to invite someone from your team to jump in on this with you right now, you can go ahead and send them an invite, or you can save it for later. I'm inviting my friend here and she's going to get notified via email, and that way we can begin to explore the seamless collaboration features that are built into Instrumentl. And we'll see what magic Instrumentl's done for me. Okay, 401 grants. So that took us, I want to say 3 and some minutes, and I've got 401 new opportunities sourced for my specific project right now. And you can see the tracker tab in the top left is empty. That's because we need to add opportunities we want to keep track of here. So the matches is where we see relevant opportunities, and the tracker is where we're saving them. So creating a little library of opportunities we're pursuing or interested in exploring further. And I want to pause here. Let's come back to Zoom if you're not here already. Not Zoom. Let's come back to said platform if you're not here already. I know that was a lot to fill out. And like I said, you can always go back and edit your search parameters. So don't feel like you need to make this perfect right now. But I want to cover the grant tracking features you'll be able to start playing with now that your account is set up and you've been matched with opportunities. So you saw that I got matched with 401 opportunities for my sample project that I put in. So hopefully you're seeing a similar result. And now that you actually have those matches, you can start playing with the tracker, which is what we're really here to talk about, the organized tracking system. So first things first, you're going to have all your grants in one place. So there's no more squinting eyes at spreadsheets or pulling this from somebody else's drive or this from somebody's desktop. It's all right here. There's no more missed deadlines because you can see all those dates are right there filled in for you based on the information provided by the funder. And you're also welcome to add your own deadlines. You'll get notifications for all of them. And there's no more confusion about who's doing what. You can easily assign ownership of tasks to Instrumentl team members and get clarity on the status of each grant. And finally, I know for folks who use spreadsheets, it's hard to say goodbye to all those additional columns that you've added for other information you want to be keeping track of. If there's priority status or private notes, anything like that. The good news here is that you actually don't have to say goodbye. You can upload historical funding opportunities from spreadsheets right into Instrumentl. And this transfer is actually done manually by our team to ensure all your important data is being seamlessly and correctly transferred over to Instrumentl. So you can see right here, you would click these buttons and it actually lets you import spreadsheets. The other thing you can do is create custom fields. This way you can design your tracking system in whatever way makes the most sense for you. This is part of our pro license, but with the account you create today, you'll actually get full access to all of it to play around, see just how flexible Instrumentl is. You have a tasks view and a calendar view right here. This allows you to see all of those upcoming assignments, so that big to-do list in one place. It can help you stay on top of everything, prioritize what you're going to do next. And then the calendar view does the same, but it's within the current month and it's more visual. So it's the kind of clarity you can't get with spreadsheets or, chasing documents across email threads. And regardless of your plan, you will get emails with deadline updates. So this example here, it'll come right to your inbox. You'll never have to dig for an updated deadline again. And you can also share and integrate your calendar to see your deadlines on Outlook, Google Calendar, whatever platform you use. So if you have something within your Instrumentl calendar, you can actually transfer it seamlessly over to your Gmail calendar, for example. And on our standard plan, you can upload those impact statements you've been so diligently updating right into your documents library. So this ensures there's one source of truth for everyone on the team. This is kind of like a Google Drive, but more organized, and everyone knows where everything lives. And finally, one of the most valuable parts, in my opinion, like I said, this info is available publicly online. So even if you're not using Instrumentl, you can pull up a Foundations 990 and get all of this information regardless. But on Instrumentl, we do it for you. So in terms of funder insights, you can see the names of key people working at a foundation. You can see the giving trends. You can actually see the names of other organizations they've funded and how much they've given those organizations and what project they supported for that organization. So that's super valuable information. You can see if they're open to new grantees. You can see their giving by NTEE code and so much more. And all of this information is really nicely laid out so that you can evaluate if you should keep this funder on your radar. And I'm just going to skip that video because we are running close to being timed. So with all of this, our users on average estimate they save about 15 hours per week. And I believe them. Trust me, I did grants and I believe them. Oh yeah, it's right here. So click the QR code if you haven't had a chance already. If you don't take advantage of the account setup right now to get your matches, I'd recommend at least just setting up the account, because after the event, like I mentioned earlier, you will have to connect with one of our grant experts before you're able to dig into your matches, and setting up an account takes probably 1 minute. So you still have time to do it right now. And with that, this is everything we covered today. We talked about the journey. We talked about how to track those opportunities, how to keep stakeholders up to date, different ways to document relationships. I know it was a lot of info, but I want to make sure if you're taking a whole hour out of your morning or your afternoon, I want to make sure you're really getting some good bang for buck. So I hope I delivered on that. I'll move us into a quick Q&A if there's like 1 or 2 questions I think we have time for. So feel free to email me with any outstanding questions later too. My email will be on the last slide. But let's just go over into this Q&A and see There's questions here. Oh my. Oh my, there's a lot of them. Okay. So the presentation mentions creating custom fields for a grant tracker. What are some key custom fields you have seen grant teams use to better track funding opportunities across projects? So this is really going to be variable for each organization. Like no two organizations are going to have the same exact custom fields. Like I said, one of the things that we did at my organization was doing that shortlisting of grants. So we would have like an initial review and then a secondary review. I've seen it done as well where if there's a larger team, you can have multiple people sign off a yes or a no on a grant opportunity. And that way there's kind of a voting system that you've built into it. Sometimes grants are a good opportunity, but you want it for maybe a later project. You're not quite ready to pursue that. So I would say another thing you can indicate in if you're using a spreadsheet is just to add a column about the timeline for the grant. So the deadline might be in a week and you don't have time for it, but you don't want to get rid of the opportunity because maybe the grant seeker or maybe the funder is going to open up that same opportunity later. So I would create a separate list for opportunities that maybe you can't pursue right now, but you want to check in on next year, for example. That's always a really helpful one if you're maybe growing your organization and not quite ready to pursue everything you're seeing. Let's see. How do you recommend transitioning from manual tracking methods like Excel to a more automated solution like Instrumentl? So, if we're speaking specifically about Instrumentl, we make it really easy for you because we do have that opportunity to just upload spreadsheets. And like I said, on the back end with that, we have a team of very smart humans who are actually handling that transfer for you. So it's not like put a spreadsheet and it'll auto populate based on what the computer thinks is right. Now we actually have people who are manually building it out for you so we can make sure that all of your very valuable funder information is transferred correctly. So usually this actually takes like a day or two to get back to you because we have people doing it manually. So that's how it is on Instrumentl. I do want to say we're 3 minutes away from time, so I'm going to move on right now. There will be my email address at the end, so if anybody has other questions, please feel free to reach out. But with that, I think we're all done here. I would love to hear your feedback on this program. I'll drop a link in the chat. This is a great way for us to get a sense of how you enjoyed today's event and things you'd love to learn more about in the future. This also helps us create better events. We read all of the feedback that everybody from every single webinar gives us. And this just helps us create events in the future that are more in line with what you're looking for. And as a reminder, everybody who fills out this form will receive today's freebie, which is this really handy resource, including real-life examples from grant seekers who have saved time and improved their workflows, all without those messy Excels. I'll make sure as well that Princey has the feedback form, so you can get that in the email as well if you don't have a chance to fill it out right now. And I also want to shout out, we have some upcoming events. So we have one October 3rd, how to find good fit funders in under 60 minutes, led by me. So if that's something that's of interest, we recommend you register for that. And I will send Princey the link for that as well. So you'll get all of this in your inbox. Don't worry about it. And with that, I want to thank you all for spending your morning with me here today. It was such a pleasure to get to connect with you all. I love hearing about your success stories in this crazy world of finding funding. I really appreciate you taking the time to share those in the chat. And for everyone who's here today, I think if there's one thing you take away, I want it to be that you're not alone in struggling with grants and funding. We are on your side. We really want to help nonprofits do more of the incredibly important work they're doing. And it is a hard world out there in grant seeking. I wish you the best of luck with your nonprofit journeys. I hope you have some exciting new opportunities to bring back to your team if you did set up an Instrumentl account. And don't forget to save this code that's on the screen. This will actually get you $50 off any annual plan if you choose to upgrade your Instrumentl account. And that's courtesy of our partnership with Community Boost. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. There's my email address. And I want to give a huge shout out to Princey and the Community Boost team. We love partnering with y'all for these events. Thanks for having us back and looking forward to our next one. Don't forget about the Fundraising AI Summit.
Thanks so much, Nia. And can I just, Nia, sorry. And can I just get everyone to give a shout out to Nia? She was amazing going through it. I always love live demos, so it's always good to see that. And as Nia said, Instrumentl is a funder, a sponsor for the Fundraising AI Summit. So please, please be sure to register for that. It is completely free to register. And yeah, can I have everyone just give her a warm round of applause and then we will close out. Thank you guys so much for coming, and we hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye.